271 AAE, then we talk about 80G, then we talk about 234G, 271K, and then accreted income के chapter जिसमें sections है 115 TD, TE and TF, and last but not the least हम 164.23 में डील करेंगे and 167B में डील करेंगे. So this will be my syllabus for today. मैं चाहता हूँ कि 15-20 मिनट का 20-25 मिनट का सेशन एक क्वेश्चन आंसर्स का रखा जाए, क्योंकि टॉक से ज्यादा ऑफ कोर्स टॉक इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, लेकिन जो लास्ट का जो 15-20 मिनट का जो क्वेश्चन आंसर्स का जो सेशन रहेगा, दैट विल बी ऑफ मोर यूटिलिटी एंड यूज टू द मेंबर्स हु आर पार्टिसिपेटिंग टुडे. तो मैं एक 15-20 मिनट का समय क्वेश्चन आंसर्स के लिए रखना चाहूंगा. ऑफ कोर्स वी आर स्टार्टिंग अ लिटिल बिट लेट, लेकिन आई विल ट्राई टू फिनिश इट विद इन टाइम. ज्यादा से ज्यादा होगा तो 10-15 मिनट ऊपर नीचे होगा, सो दैट आई थिंक the branch will allow me the additional 10 to 15 minutes. Coming to section 215, सबसे बहुत सारे सभी मेंबर्स को मैं एक ही चीज इंसिस्ट करना चाहता हूँ. फर्स्ट एंड फॉरमोस्ट सेक्शन 215 को अच्छी तरह से समझ ले. सेक्शन 215 इज द डेफिनेशन ऑफ चैरिटेबल पर्पस. जब when we are dealing with charitable organization, सबसे पहली बार हमको डेफिनेशन समझना जरूरी है कि वो चैरिटेबल ट्रस्ट में आता क्या क्या है. What all is treated as charitable purpose? So definition says relief of poor, education, yoga, medical relief, preservation of environment, preservation of monuments, and advancement of any other object of general public utility. ये 7वां रेसिडुअल सेक्शन है जिसमें बहुत सारी दूसरी संस्थाएं आ जाती है. फॉर एग्जांपल ट्रेड एसोसिएशंस है, मेडिकल एसोसिएशंस है, कोई प्रोफेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, स्पोर्ट्स ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस है, वो सारे इस रेसिडुअल सेक्शन में आ जाते हैं. मैं बहुत सारा डेफिनेशन पार्ट रीड करके, क्योंकि मैंने बहुत इलेबोरेट पीपीटी बनाया हुआ है, द पीपीटी इज ऑफ नियरली 90 स्लाइड्स, और वो मैंने राकेश जी से रिक्वेस्ट किया है कि ईमेल आईडी मुझे प्रोवाइड कर दें ताकि मैं वो पीपीटी मेरा शेयर कर दूं फॉर द बेनिफिट ऑफ द मेंबर्स. तो कोई डिटेल में पढ़ना चाहे तो इट विल बी यूजफुल फॉर हिम. तो मैं सेक्शन 215 की बात आगे बढ़ा रहा हूँ. सेक्शन 215 में कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट फैक्टर्स है जो अपने को समझने चाहिए. बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस रहते हैं 215 को लेके, तो कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट हाइलाइटर्स जो है या कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंटर्स बेस्ड ऑन द जुडिशियल प्रोनाउंसमेंट्स, मैंने कुछ पॉइंट्स लिखे हैं, तो वो मैं पॉइंट्स एक बार फटाफट रीड कर लेता हूं. द डेफिनेशन ऑफ चैरिटेबल पर्पस इज इंक्लूसिव. एज द डेफिनेशन सजेस्ट्स, द चैरिटेबल पर्पस इंक्लूड्स, यानी दिस इज अ इंक्लूसिव सेक्शन, इंक्लूसिव डेफिनेशन. पहले शुरू में इसमें 4 चीजें हुआ करती थी, फिर बढ़ते बढ़ते 6 हुई, फिर 7 हुई. इस प्रकार से उसमें मतलब आइटम्स ऐड होते जा रहे हैं बेस्ड ऑन द नीड ऑफ द सोसाइटी. उसके बाद a purpose must in order to be charitable be directed to the benefit of the community or section of the community as distinguished from an individual or a group of individual. यानी the purpose should be directed towards a community or a section of the community. It may not be for the whole of mankind. अगर कम्युनिटी से डील कर रहे हैं आप, सेक्शन ऑफ द कम्युनिटी से भी डील कर रहे हैं तो भी ठीक है. The only thing is it should not be directed towards an individual or a group of individuals. एक और इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट इसमें ये है, पब्लिक चैरिटेबल ट्रस्ट में द बॉडी ऑफ बेनिफिशियरीज इज ऑलवेज फ्लक्चुएटिंग. आज जो बेनिफिशियरीज है एक चैरिटेबल ट्रस्ट के, हो सकता है कल वो ना हो, एंड वेरी राइटली सो. जब हम एक प्राइवेट ट्रस्ट की बात करते हैं तो उसमें द बॉडी ऑफ बेनिफिशियरीज इज फिक्स्ड, whereas in a public charitable trust the body of beneficiaries is always fluctuating. So that has to be kept in mind. अगर वो आपका वो टेस्ट अगर फुलफिल होता है तो यू कैन कंटेस्ट, यू कैन प्रूव योर केस प्रॉपरली एंड नाइसली. कमिंग टू अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट प्रोवाइजो, 2008 में ये प्रोवाइजो ऐड हुआ था, एंड नाउ आई विल रेफर टू दी असेसमेंट ईयर 2016-17 में ये लेटेस्ट चेंजेस हुए हैं. ये प्रोवाइजो क्या कहता है कि अगर आपका जो रेसिडुअल सेक्शन है, एडवांसमेंट ऑफ ऑब्जेक्ट्स ऑफ एनी अदर पब्लिक यूटिलिटी, उसमें अगर आप कोई बिजनेस एक्टिविटी सॉर्ट ऑफ करते हैं, इंसिडेंटल बिजनेस एक्टिविटी, एंड दैट बिजनेस, द अमाउंट जनरेटेड फ्रॉम दैट बिजनेस एक्टिविटी exceeds 20% of the entire receipts, in that case you will be denied the exemptions offered by the income tax act. अगर आपका टर्नओवर लेस देन 20% है, in that case it will be treated as a charitable purpose and you will get the necessary exemptions. This is what the proviso says. Now very important thing is the intention is to why this was introduced. this was, I would quote the reply of the finance minister to the debate in Lok Sabha on the Finance Bill 2008 when it was introduced. The finance minister in the Lok Sabha said the intention is to limit the benefit to entities which are engaged in charitable activities and to deny it to purely commercial and business entities. Now, in your practice, you will find many clients. You will find many clients. They must be doing some business. They must be getting income. The tax must be deducted out of that income. So that does not actually mean that you are into a commercial activity or a business activity. What we have to see is what is the money being put? Where is the money used? Where is the money used? The utility of the money has to be seen to decide whether that activity is commercial or not. If the activity is not commercial and if it is not a business activity, in that case, it can be safely termed as a charitable activity. For example, I would quote one example. I am recently dealing with a client which is a association of professionals. I mean, they are running the organization mutually. They are getting some mutual incomes. They are getting some donations. They are getting some sponsors after tax being deducted from the income being offered to them. So it is a mix of income, but the money is put to use whereby they are carrying on various activities which are of public good, which are of public health. So that is why, in my contention, according to me, what I am putting forward the case of the client in front of the income tax department, whereby I am claiming that it is not a business activity, and therefore the necessary deductions available under the Income Tax Act be given to my client. So, I mean, we have to take a holistic view. Then a certain case laws, pharmacy and hospital is integral part. You know, if you are running a pharmacy in a hospital again is not in the residual section. It is in the main first 6 sections, whereby there is no limitation on the business activity being carried out based on what is written in the Act. So pharmacy, if it is run within the hospital, it is an integral part of the hospital. Then cancellation based on proviso to section 215 read with section 13.8. We will be dealing with section 13.8 later on. What this means is suppose if we have violated the proviso of section 215 for a particular year, so the deductions under section 11 and 12 will be denied only for that particular year. Suppose in the next year, we are meeting all the criteria to justify that the activities are charitable. In other words, if the business activity carried out by the trust is less than 20% of the entire turnover, in that case, you will get the deductions available under section 11 and 12. Next point I have written is the above restriction does not apply in respect of the first 6 limbs of section 215. So again, I have already covered this point, and these particular activities are covered under section 11.4 and 11.4a, which we will be dealing later on. Now coming to section 1023C, 1023C is a very vast section. Basically, we are dealing with subsections over here. The subsections are 3AB, 3AC, 3AD, 3AE. I'm not going into the detailed explanations of all these sections. Section 4, I mean subsection 4, subsection 5, 6, and 6A. These subsections are mainly dealing with educational organizations, hospitals, charitable trusts which are not registered under section 12A. These are the organizations which fall under these particular subsections. So nowadays, I mean, there are certain changes. One special mention I would like to mention over here is regarding subclause 3AD and 3AE. 3AB, 3AC is regarding the organization run by government grants. Then 3AD, 3AE is organization. Earlier, the limit whereby was 1 crore. Now that limit is enhanced by the budget, by the Finance Bill 2021 to 5 crores. And in that particular turnover of 5 crores, you have to include all the turnover of all the entities. You have to merge the turnover of all the entities and then try test it with the threshold limit of 5 crores. If the turnover is below 5 crores, in that case, 3AD and 3AE will be applicable. If the turnover crosses 5 crores, in that case, you have to take the permission from the Income Tax Department under 1023C, 6 and 6A. 6 pertains to educational institutions and 6A pertains to medical institutions. So this is about the turnover part of 3AD and 3AE and 6 and 6A. So I've covered 6 and 6A. Now, As I told you in the beginning, the Finance Act 2020 brought in a lot of changes. What were those changes? Those changes were regarding the maturity or the time period for which the registrations can be obtained from the Income Tax Department. The Finance Act 2020 said earlier, whoever is registered under Section 1023C, they will have to apply again. And then the period for application for re-registration is 1st April 2021 to 31st March 2022. Under this particular period of 12 months, you have to apply for the re-registrations, the organizations which are already registered under Section 1023C. So this was the major change. Over and above that, there is one more change as far as Finance Act 2020 is concerned. That change is they have introduced provisional registrations. Provisional registrations is issued. Provisional registration is issued to an organization which is not registered earlier with the Income Tax Department. Why this has been brought in? This has been brought in for the facility of the charitable organizations which are new and who want to do, who are interested in carrying out the activities. But if they don't get the registrations, they are not in a position to raise the funds. So that is why this provisional registration concept has been brought in. And in this provisional registration, the registration is given for a period of 3 years. And you have to convert that provisional registration into regular registration. The time limit given for that is either 6 months, within 6 months from the end of the month in which we start the activities, or 6 months before the expiry of the provisional registration, whichever is earlier. For example, suppose if you are coming up with an organization, you start your trust, you apply for provisional registration, you will get your provisional registration. And suppose you start your activity immediately. Suppose you start your activity in the month of, say, February 22. In that case, within 6 months, that is March, April, May, June, July, August. Before 31st of August, you have to apply for the regular registration. Or suppose if you don't start the activity now, and the provisional registration, 2.5 years of the provisional registration has passed. So before 6 months, that is February 2025 minus 6 months. Before that, you have to apply for your regular registration. Otherwise, your provisional registration will lapse. You will have to again apply for registration. Once you get your regular registration, after that, every 5 years, you have to renew that registration. So these are the changes as far as Finance Act 2020 is concerned. Now, why all this is being done? This is being done because the department earlier was not having any modus operandi whereby they can verify the genuineness of the number which has been offered by the SSC. So now the entire process is online and it is very easy nowadays. Earlier it was very difficult. We had to visit the Income Tax Department for at least 2 to 3 times to prove our case, to justify our case. And even then, most of the times the applications were being rejected. So now the matter to some extent has been simplified. But of course, the re-registration after every 5 years has to be done. That is another additional work which the SSC has to face. But of course, it is an opportunity as far as we chartered accountants are concerned. So this is about 1023C and the amendments brought in by the Finance Act 2020. One more very important change which has been brought by the Finance Act 2020 is about procuring the audit reports and submitting the audit reports. The dates have been correlated to the dates which have been mentioned in Section 4480. In other words, you have to submit your audit report maximum by the 30th of September and the return has to be filed maximum by the 31st of October. So the time limits which are applicable to 44AB have been made applicable to charitable trusts also. Charitable trusts and institutions as the case may be. For the convenience of the participants, I have given a chart over here which says the category of registration, which describes the category of registration, time limit for application, time limit for passing the order by the relevant authority. Then basically nowadays the relevant authority, again PCIT or the Commissioner of Income Tax, period of approval, exemption available from which year, and forms, in which form the application has to be made and in which form you will get the approval from the Income Tax Department. All is covered in this chart. And Mind well, for this particular financial year, the applications which will be made, the fresh trusts who are applying for provisional registrations, the registrations will be available for the financial year 21-22 also. After that, the 1 month ka criteria will be applicable. After that, suppose if you want the registration for the financial year 23-24, from the financial year 23-24, in that case, it is necessary for you to make the applications by maximum by the end of February 2023. Only for this particular year, this leeway has been given, and that is described in Rule 2C of the Income Tax Rules. Now, coming to 2022, the amendments are proposed, of course, but I feel that there is nothing which will stop these amendments. These amendments are going to come undoubtedly. What are those amendments? By the Finance Act 2020. Under clause 5, one very important amendment: if property held under trust includes any temple, mosque, gurudwara, church, or other place notified under ATG2B. ATG2B is a sanction whereby the central government notifies a particular organization. It is mentioned in the official gazette. Now, and this, what does this amendment say? Suppose if they are receiving any voluntary contributions for renovation of the temple, mosque, gurudwara, church, or any other place which is notified, the SSC can, at their own discretion, transfer a particular amount as forming part of the corpus, provided conditions are given, provided the corpus to be applied for the purpose for which it is received. Of course, no donation to be made to any other person. Corpus should be separately identifiable and to be invested as per section 11.5. Then one more explanation is given. If any of the 4 conditions are violated, the amount becomes taxable in the year of violation. And very rightly so. This similar provision is introduced in section 11 also. Similar provision is introduced in section 11 for organizations registered under section 12. Then we talk about the third explanation. What does that third explanation say? Third explanation is similar to section 11.2. Now, what does 11.2 say? 11.2 is a section whereby you can accumulate a certain amount for a period of 5 years. Earlier, 1023C organizations did not have this particular explanation or did not have this particular section or proviso. Now the explanation has been added, and 1023 organizations have been brought at par with the organizations which are registered under section 20. You can accumulate not for a period not more than 5 years. Now, one more explanation 4, similar to section 11.3. What does 11.3 say? 11.3 gives you the conditions that if you violate section 11.2, you will be taxable at the maximum marginal rate in the year of violation. Very simple. And then one more explanation, explanation 5. Now this explanation is similar to section 11.3a. What does 11.3a say? That suppose if a particular organization has accumulated a fund for a specific purpose and for a specific period not exceeding 5 years, in that case, if the execution of the object or spending the money on the object for which the money is accumulated becomes difficult or impossible, in that case, they may apply to the income tax department or the assessing officer, and they may tell them, this is the situation. Now, the application for the purpose for which the money is accumulated has become virtually impossible. So please allow to spend the money on the other objects which are mentioned in our trust deed. So the income tax department, after verifying the credentials of the application, may grant you the permission, saying that you may use this money for other objects which are core to the trust deed or the constitutional document of the charitable trust. Then one more thing which is added over and above audit. Audit was one of the conditions to avail the deduction. One more section, I would say, proviso is being added. You will have to keep and maintain books of account and other document in such form and manner and at such place as may be prescribed. So this is one more addition. 15th proviso substituted. 15 proviso, what does 15, how is it substituted? It talks about the powers of the PCIT or CIT. The PCIT or CIT can take cognizance of specified violations. Specified violations is again defined specifically. They may take cognizance suo moto, reference from the AO, or selection by the board under the risk management strategy. A new thing is coming up now. A new thing is coming up. A risk management strategy. The board will frame a risk management strategy, and under that strategy, if the board feels that the PCIT or CIT should take cognizance of a specified violation, in that case, the CIT will move ahead, call for the necessary information, call for the necessary documents, and pass a relevant order, whether cancelling the registration or not cancelling the registration, as the case may be. It will be a very speaking order, and the order will be forwarded to the assessing officer, and the assessing officer has to assess the case based on the order issued by the PCIT or the CIT, as the case may be. Now, specified date has been specified. Specified date. What is a specified date? Suppose a assessing officer refers a matter to PCIT or CIT saying, sir, this particular case has to be investigated, or this particular SSC has to be investigated for reasons mentioned below. In that case, the PCIT will take cognizance of that particular case. The order of that particular case has to be passed within 6 months from the end of the quarter in which the reference has been received. So this is your specified date. And I will cover that in 143.3. Let me tell you right over here. In 143.3, there has been a provision that if the time spent by the PCIT to issue the order against the reference made, to that extent, the assessing officer will get an extra time for completing the assessment. And very rightly so, because suppose if the income tax, if the PCIT is taking say 6 months to pass an order, definitely the assessing officer should get an additional amount of 6 months, additional time period of 6 months to complete the assessment. Specified violation again has been defined by explanation 2. What is specified violation? Income applied for objects, more or less the same conditions. Income from activities not incidental to the attainment of objects, separate books of account not maintained, audit not done, not genuine activities, non-compliance under any other law for the time being in force. Now, this is a very important thing, non-compliance under any other law for the time being in force. You have to comply with all the laws, with all the acts which are relevant to your organization. If this PCIT or CIT comes to know that you have not complied under any other law, he may cancel your registration. Explanation 3 is basically academic purpose. If no action has been taken till 31st March 2022, it will be assumed that the reference has been received on 1st April 2022. That's fine. 19th provision, replacing prescribed authority and reference to notification by PCIT or CIT, as the case may be. Now, there are certain more provisos inserted which will come into effect from 1/4/2023. And before I proceed further, I forgot to tell you one more thing regarding the donations which are received by the organizations notified under section 80G2B, which I covered earlier. The amendment will come into effect from 1/4/2021. So that I forgot to mention, I am mentioning here. Now, what other provisos are proposed to be included as far as section 1023C organizations are concerned? As per section 12A(1)(ba), to avail the benefits of section 1112, the return has to be filed as per section 139(4)(a). 139(4)(a) within the time prescribed under section 139(1). There was no such provision for trust institution falling under 1023C. While this proviso, the trust institution falling under section 1023C have to submit their returns in accordance with the provisions of section 139(4)(c) read with section 139(1). That means you will have to abide by the due dates mentioned in section 139(1). Earlier, there was no such mention. So they are removing all the differences by adding all these provisos and explanations to 1023C. Income applied for direct or indirect benefit of the specified person to be taxed. Okay, fine. Earlier, this was also not covered. 13(3) was covered by organization registered under section 12A. Now they propose to cover 1023C organizations also under section 13.3. Surplus to be taxed after allowing expenditure other than capital expenditure. Such expenditure is not from corpus fund, loan or borrowing. Now, very important thing. Earlier, a lot of my member friends must have seen that if you don't have the necessary registrations, your trust was assessed as a AOP, and even they did not allow the genuine expenditures. The entire gross amount was taxable at maximum marginal rate. So and there was a lot of litigations arose because of this particular treatment. So that is why this ambiguity has been proposed to be put to rest. Now, under these particular amendments, what they are doing is, even if you are not registered, even if there is a certain violation, you will get the expenditures deducted from your gross income. Of course, subject to certain things. The expenditure should not be from corpus fund, then loan or borrowing expenditure will not be allowed. Depreciation, if the entire cost of the asset is debited to the income and expenditure account, either in the particular assessment financial year or the earlier financial year, in that case, you will not get depreciation also, and very rightly so. Then, as far as 1023C are concerned, there was no provision regarding TDS mentioned specifically. Now, why this amendment, what they are proposing is, if any expenditure made about 10,000 rupees, and if it is made in cash, in that case, 30% of the expenses will be disallowed. So earlier 1023 sections, all these things were not mentioned as far as 1023C is concerned. One more thing, no deduction on account of any expenditure or allowance or set off. Earlier, there was an ambiguity regarding set off of previous year's deficit towards the income of the subsequent year. That ambiguity also has been put to rest. You will not be allowed any set off. Now, one more explanation, explanation 3, some payable shall be considered as application of income during the previous year in which it is actually paid. Now, this is it is a huge change. Earlier, there were judicial precedences whereby I will quote those judgments later on, but there were judgments whereby the honorable courts have said that even if the amount is provided, if it is not actually spent, it will be treated as an application. But now the income tax department, via these amendments, proposes to change that scenario, and the income tax department want to treat the amount as applied only if it is actually spent. No provisions will be allowed to claim application of income towards the objects of the trust. So that is what they are proposing. Where any sum has been claimed as applied during a previous year, such sum shall not be allowed as application in any subsequent. Very rightly so. Now, coming to section 11.1, most of the members are aware of section 11.1. I'm not going into the definition part. Grossly, section 21 says that whatever you receive, you have to spend 85%. 15% will be your statutory deduction. That you can carry forward for perpetuity. And of course, all these calculations are excluding corpus donation. Corpus donation is your capital receipt and it will not be taxed. Now, as far as section 11.1 is concerned, I will come to the amendments. As far as budget 2021 is concerned, application from loans and borrowing shall not be considered as application for charitable or religious purpose. However, when loans and borrowings are repaid from the income of the previous year, such repayment shall be allowed as application in the previous year in which it is repaid. So this budget 2021 had proposed this change, and this has become a law. So 11.1a, 11.1b is about this. 11.1c is about applying income towards applying income towards the objects of the trust outside India. Now 11.1c, there is a catch. When you go to the registering authority, in Maharashtra we have got charity commissioner. When you go to a charity commissioner saying कि भाई ये हमारा trust deed है और ये इसमें हमने ये provision भी रखा है कि हम पैसा इंडिया के बाहर भी spend कर सकते हैं towards the objects of the trust. So generally they will object to it, but my humble opinion is you should mention the clause. You should mention the clause because the Income Tax Act says that if you don't have that particular clause, and if you want to spend money outside India and on the objects and projects which are notified by the government, in that case, what you will do? So you have to frame your clause in such a fashion that you may say that the money will be spent outside India subject to the approval of the central government, or on the projects which are notified or approved by the central government or the state government, as the case may be. So in that case, I don't think that there should be a problem. Of course, we have to deal with the charity commissioner. There are many states where there is no charity commissioner. So in that case, it is a different ballgame altogether. So you should mention the clause, but of course, you should mention it tactfully so that whenever if you want to spend the money out on the objects of the trust outside India, you don't have a problem. There are many important notes, important points. Of course, section 11(1)(d) talks about corpus donation. Corpus donation is tax-free, but of course, when you prepare your computation, corpus is an income defined by section 224 and exempt under section 11(1)(d). So you have to add under section 224 and reduce under section 11(1)(d). So that you have to be very careful when you prepare your computation. That I have already covered in my notes also. Trustees, a few case laws that the members can go through for their reference. Trustees have no power to treat in their discretion any amount received as corpus donation. You got to have a specific direction from the donor saying that this amount should form part of the corpus donation, corpus fund. So this is about some cases about corpus donations. Now, budget 2021, corpus donation shall be deposited as notified under section 11(5). Application out of corpus shall not be considered as application. You have to compensate the corpus donation. And when you compensate the corpus donation, at that time, the amounts transferred to the corpus donation will be treated as your application. So that you have to be very careful now. Identity of the donor and voluntary nature of the donation to be established for corpus donation. These are the things which are to be established. And mind well, the direction from the donor as far as corpus donation is concerned can be given at the time of assessment also. There are many case laws. It is not necessary that you take the direction right when you take the donation. Many times, you receive the donation, but you have forgotten to receive the direction. It may be received later on, but of course, before the assessment proceedings are completed. Now, there is a Supreme Court judgment. The Supreme Court has held that even interest generated on corpus donation is excluded from the income if the donor provides specific direction in this regard. So that is also possible. Trust is registered with the Commissioner of Income Tax under section 12AA or 12AB as the case may be. And books are audited as per section 12A1B, very necessary. These are the conditions. Now, coming to explanation 1A and B. Rather than going through the explanations, I will take a practical example. What are these explanations? Suppose if you receive a donation on the 31st of March 2022, how will you apply that amount? You cannot. And if it is a sizable donation, because of that, your application is falling your application percentage is falling well below 85%. And you are landing up into taxes. In that case, the explanations comes to your rescue. You can file form number 9A. You can intimate the income tax department saying for so and so reason, we are not in a position to apply this amount. Or as a matter of fact, you must have received that amount for projects to be executed in the next financial year. So you can write to the income tax department in form 9A and tell them, this is the amount which I want to earmark, which has to be spent towards the objects of the trust in the next financial year. So that is allowed. Suppose somebody has committed that I will give you so and so donation, and you have booked that donation in your books of accounts, but you have not received it. In that case also, you can earmark that amount. Suppose if you say that somebody has committed 10 lakhs, that I'll give you 10 lakhs, you book that amount, you will show that amount in sundry debtors. But for all practical purposes, you can set aside that amount and while filing form number 9A and intimate to the income tax department that I will spend the money when it is received in the financial year when it is received or in the subsequent financial year. So this is the explanation as far as 11(1)A and B is concerned. So this is a very good facility which the income tax department provides to the organizations. charitable trust institutions. Now, I think most filing of form number 9A, online filing of form number 9A and 10. 10 I will deal later on. Online filing of form number 9A made mandatory from the assessment year 16-17. So there was a lot of goof up, a lot of people did not file, a lot of people filed late. So for 16-17, 17-18 and 18-19 assessment years, the Income Tax Department wide circular has authorized the PCIT, the Principal Commissioner of Income Tax Exemptions or Commissioner of Income Tax Exemptions as the case may be, to condone the delay in filing form number 9A. So if any of you are having such cases, you can write to the Commissioner of Income Tax so that the delay can be condoned and you can get the necessary deductions. Explanation 2, restrictive amendment by Finance Act. Now, what is this restrictive amendment? From financial year 2017 onwards, any trust or NGO availing tax exemption benefit under Section 11 or 1023 shall not be allowed to treat corpus donation given to another charitable organization registered under Section 12A as application. What does this mean? From financial year 17-18, corpus donation from one charitable organization or institution to another charitable organization or institution, whether falling under 1023C or registered under Section 12A, will not be allowed as an application towards the objects of the trust. Of course, the amendment has no impact if the corpus donation is given out of accumulated funds. Corpus to corpus you can give, but from income accrued or received in a particular financial year, you cannot give any corpus donations to other organizations. Now again, explanation 3 talks about TDS. You have to deduct TDS for payments about 10,000 rupees. And if you are making any payment about 10,000 rupees in cash, in that case, the entire amount will be put to tax. No set off budget 2021 ka change, no set off will be allowed previous year's deficit towards the income of the next subsequent financial year. Now, what are the Finance Bill 2022 amendments proposed by the government? Again, if property held under trust includes temple, I've already covered this, mosque, gurudwara, church, etc. In that case, the SSC can treat a particular receipt or an amount as a corpus donation towards the repairs or renovation of the religious places, provided the conditions are given. We have already covered, so I'm not repeating those conditions. And again, explanation 3B says that if you violate those conditions, you will be put to tax. Some important points: the reference to the term property does not necessarily mean any movable or immovable property. Business undertaking as covered under Section 11(4) is also property held under trust. Similarly, there are various things which I have covered. The Supreme Court judgment, I would like to put a special thrust on this particular judgment. The Supreme Court, in the case of CIT versus Thanti Trust, held that where there was no doubt about the authenticity of the application, then it could not be disallowed even if physical funds have not been parted with. The word applied should not necessarily be understood to mean spent. It has a wider connotation, so that even a provision may be understood as an application. This is again CIT exemption versus Ohio University Christ College 2018, very recent judgment. But now this has been put to rest. This judgment is of no relevance in further years after the amendments. Now, what does that amendment? We have already covered that amendment, but let me tell you again. Wide explanation 3 to 1023C, explanation to Section 11(7) by the Finance Bill 2022. The amount actually spent can only be treated as application of income, irrespective of the accounting method followed by the SEC. So this is the fresh change. Likewise, there are many other case laws. The members are requested to go through them for their knowledge update. Section 11(1)A talks about capital gains, but practically speaking, I have been dealing with many trusts for the last so many years, but I have never come across a case whereby I had to deal with capital gain. But my formula is simple. If we sell an asset and if you receive the amount, that amount should be shown as an income, and that has to be applied as per Section 11(1). And there are many judgments whereby the income tax department has said that even if the amount which is received by selling an asset, if it is invested as per section 11.5, that is also a good enough utilization of the capital gain towards the objects of the trust, thereby not taxable. But anyways, because it is a section I have mentioned for academic purpose, you can purchase fixed deposits also. You can, there are many judgments where it says that even if the amount is kept in any 11.5 specified asset is purchased, it is fine. And of course, section 50C is not applicable to capital assets as far as charitable trust institutions are concerned, because charitable institutions trusts are grossly covered by section 1023C, section 11, section 12, and section 13. Section 11(1)(b), consequences of non-application of income after exercising options. Which options? The explanations which we talked about. Utilizing the money received in a particular financial year, but to be used in the next financial year, or income accrued but not received to be applied in the year of receipt or in the subsequent financial year. If the amount is not used as prescribed under the explanations, in that case, the amount becomes taxable in the hands of the SEC. So that is what section 11(1)(b) says. Now this is section 11(2). Now section 11(2) talks about accumulation for a period of 5 years, not more than 5 years to be precise. The money so accumulated has to be invested in securities or modes specified in section 11(5). The statement referred to in clause A is furnished before the due date. Now here, as far as 11(2) is concerned, form number 10 has to be submitted. Now, one very important thing which I would like to mention as far as 11(2) case is concerned, you have to file form number 10 before the due date of filing the return. You cannot wait up to 31st of March. Suppose the due date for filing the return is 31st of October. The form number 10 has to be filed before 31st of October. The audit report has to be obtained and filed on or before 30th September. If the due dates are missed, you will not get the deduction of amount accumulated. This is a very important thing as far as 11(2) is concerned. And of course, in 17, 17, 18, 18, 19, similar provisions were there. And the condonation of delay was authorized, powers were given to the PCIT. And if anybody has cases falling under these assessment years, you can always approach the PCIT for condonation of delay and get your necessary deductions, exemptions as the case may be. One more very important thing as far as 11(2) is concerned. Earlier, there was an ambiguity that will be covered in 11(3), but let me cover it here itself. Earlier, 11(2) says that not more than 5 years. But the charging section 11(3), what does that section say? That section says that after the period of 5 years, if the amount is not utilized in the subsequent year, then it will be taxed. So in other words, section 11(3) was giving a grace period of 1 year. Effectively, you could utilize that amount in a period of 6 years. But that, of course, according to me, was an ambiguity as far as the law is concerned. That ambiguity has been put to rest, and those amendments are mentioned out here. Here it is. Earlier, section 11(2) provided a 5-year period for accumulation, but by virtue of section 11(3), the penalty proceedings were attracted only after the expiry of the 6th year. In other words, a grace period of 1 year was provided by the Act of Utilization of Income accumulated under section 11(2). This issue has been dealt with by the Finance Bill 2022. From now on, the unutilized amount accumulated under section 11(2) shall become taxable in the last previous year of the period for which the income is accumulated. So this has been dealt with now. Section 11(3), there are other conditions whereby you cannot give the amount to other organizations. If you make donations from that particular amount to other charitable trusts, in that case, you will be denied the exemption. The amount will be added to your income whenever you give the donation to other organization. So that is about 11(2) and 11(3). 11(3)(a). What does 11(3)(a) says? Many a times it so becomes that amount is accumulated for a particular purpose, but somehow spending that amount for that particular purpose becomes impossible due to unavoidable circumstances. In that case, 11.3a comes to your rescue. You can write to the income tax department saying that such and such is the case. You allow us to spend this money on some other objects, falling under the constitutional document of the charitable trust or the institution as the case. And the income tax department, after verifying the credentials, will grant you the permission to spend the money as you have requested. Eleven 4.4a talks about business undertakings that we have grossly covered earlier. One very important thing, there is nothing in the statute to suggest that tax audit under section 44AB shall apply to business undertaking under section 11.4a as long as registration under section 12AA or 12AB is intact. Various case laws, if anybody is interested, can go through it. Section 11.5 talks about the specified modes for investing. So this is just a read on basically. Some case laws. One very important thing out of the judicial pronouncements which I have seen, that if you are investing some amount of the trust other than the mode specified in section 11.5, the income generated from those investments will only be put to tax at the maximum marginal rate. You will not lose the entire exemption. There are many judgments on these grounds. Section 11.6, earlier people used to claim the entire purchase value of the, people used to debit the entire amount of a fixed asset purchased to the income and expenditure account. Over and above that, they used to claim depreciation also. So that was a double deduction which has been taken care of by the Finance Act 2014. And now the provision stands, or the section stands, that if you have claimed the purchase value of the fixed asset and you have debited that amount to the income and expenditure account, in that case, you will not be allowed depreciation on that particular asset. So that is about 11.6. 11.7, earlier, both the sections, 1023C and section 12A, used to go hand in hand. Suppose if you are not qualified under section 12A, you can claim exemption under section 1023C. But that was amended by the Finance Act 2020. The Finance Act 2020 said that you can either claim exemption under section 12A or you can claim exemption under section 1023C. Both the things will not go hand in hand. So that is about it. And 11C, now the Finance Act 2022 has introduced an explanation. Introduced after section 11.7. Any sum payable by the trust shall be treated as application only in the previous year in which the payment is actually made. That we have already covered in 1023C. Here it is added as an explanation to section 11.7. Section 12 again. Now the basic difference between section 11 and 12. Of late, many of the people were not aware, sir, 11 or 12. 11 is about income generated from the business undertaking or the asset belonging to the charitable trust. And section 12 is voluntary contributions. For example, if you are running an educational institution, you must be receiving some fees. So that will fall under section 11. And if you are receiving some donation, voluntary donation, that will fall under section 11. That will fall under section 12. So this is about the difference between 11 and 12. That now 12.1 and 12.2 is what? Value of services provided to persons referred in section 13.3. Now what does this mean? Persons referred in section 13.3, the people who are promoters of the charitable organization, if they are running an educational institute or if they are running a medical institute, and if they are availing certain benefits from the charitable organizations, in that case, the amount of the services provided to them will be treated as voluntary contribution. So that is about section 12.2. 12A, conditions for applicability of section 11.1 and 12 of the Act, you have to apply for registration. That is the major condition. Of course, a lot of the dates which have been mentioned, 1st June 2007, 31st May 2007, Finance Act 2014, by the passage of time, more or less all these dates have become irrelevant. Now 12AB is the main thing and 12AA is the main thing. Once you get your organization registered, once you have got your registration under section 12A, 12AA, and that registration is say 20 years old. And if you re-register under section 12AB, your trust will be eligible for the earlier 20 years plus the forthcoming 5 years. So that is how it works. 2007 is not of much relevance now. 2014 is not. But because it is mentioned in the Act, I have included in my PPT also. Case laws, of course, no issues. Then the most important section is 12A1AC. What is 12A1AC? Again, replacement of 12AA by 12AB. 12A. Again, the concept of renewal of 5 years has come in. Concept of provisional registration, as we discussed earlier, has come in. Concept of fresh provisional registration I have covered. Then re-registration of the already existing registered trust. Then renewal of the trusts which are registered under section 12AB.
I don't know what you want.
Applying for the registration after the expiry of 5 years. That is one more concept. And applying for registration on the change of the objects. Suppose if there is a change in the objects, you have to apply for registration within 30 days, fresh registration within 30 days. Otherwise, you will lose the exemption, you will lose the registration under section 12AB. Your organization will be treated, yours will be a fit case for 115 TD TETF, accreted income. And you will land up into a lot of taxes. So that is why we have to be very careful as far as change of objects is concerned.
What is the lift now? You'll have to open it yourself. Dharam will come now in some time.
Rakesh ji,
देख रहा हूँ कौन बोल रहा है.
I think
Somebody disturbing.
So this is how it is. 12A1AC. Then
Participants,
12A1B
please mute
again.
the. Hello, participants. Please mute your mic. Thank you, Rohiji. Continue.
Yes, sir. Then coming to 12A1B. 12A1B again, audit report, which you have already discussed. You have to obtain the audit report by 30th September and submit it. And we have to file the returns by 31st October as far as your 12A approved trusts are concerned also. Proposed amendment in section 12A by the Finance Bill 2022. What we have added over here, the books of accounts and other documents have been kept and maintained in such form and manner and at such places as may be prescribed. This is what is being added. Return to be filed as per the section 139 4A. Again, 12A 1BA. Earlier there was a lot of controversy.
थोड़ा आधा एक लड़का को धर्म आएगा. बस 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 रहने दे बस बस. किटन्स को आके खिलाएगी. कल भी किसी ने खिलाया नहीं किटन्स.
12A 1BA.
This is so bad now.
Earlier there we have seen certain cases whereby the return was not filed on the due date and the exemption was the deductions under section 11 and 12 were totally disallowed and huge tax liabilities were created. But then there was a clarification issued by the income tax department and all the demands were pulled back. Section 12A2, application made on or after 1/6 not of much relevance in relation to 12A1AC1 above this, above that is existing trust registered under section 12AA from assessment year from which such trust was earlier granted registration. This we have already covered. And provisional registration also very important. Once you convert your provisional registration to regular registration, your trust will be treated as registration right from the financial year in which the provisional registration had become effective. So that is a very important point you have to. And my friends, I would like to recommend here that in each and every constitutional document, there are certain basic clauses, 6 clauses, which are to be mentioned. That is irrevocability clause, beneficiary clause, dissolution clause, the funds will, the utilization clause, which we call alteration and amendment clause, and investment. Very important. We face a lot of challenges in Maharashtra when we go for 12 and 18. Of course, where there is no charity commissioner, we may not face this challenge. But me, of course, income tax department will take cognizance of this without fail. So I request you to please incorporate all these clauses in your constitutional documents. 12AA is about procedure for registration under section 12A. Everybody is aware of this procedure, how the documents are called, how the department is hearing those cases. 12AA, of course, it is an old section now, replaced by 12AB. But since it is effective till 31st of March 2021, I have included it. So coming to 12AB again. 12AB again, the procedure is being defined, how you will get the registration, how you will get the provisional registration, how the registration granted under section 12AB will be renewed, what are the time limits. Now let me come to the time limits. I did not cover the time limit earlier. Time limits are what? Suppose if you are filing a re-registration now, the time limit is in the month, within 3 months from the month in which the application is made, from the end of the month in which the application is made. Suppose if you are making an application in February 2022, you should get your 12A re-registration by 31st of May. Then as far as provisional registration is concerned, the time period is 1 month from the end of the month in which the application is made. So these are the time limits which are prescribed. And once after getting your re-registration done and after the expiry of 5 years, which will fall in say March 2026. So 6 months before March 2026, you have to apply for your regular re-registration again for 5 years. So these are the time limits which have been prescribed. Of course, I'm not reading all the text which has been provided because I have given a chart over. This chart is very self-speaking, so you can take advantage of this chart. I've written the application forms also and the forms in which you will receive the approval. Now, coming to the amendments as far as 2022 is concerned. Subsection 4 and 5 have been introduced, talks about the powers of PCIT again to take cognizance of the specified violations as we discussed in section 1023C. Those things have been introduced in section 12AB also. Specified date has been defined and specified violations have been defined. So I'm not going into detail once again. We have already covered it. If anybody has got some query, we can deal with it at the time of question and answer sessions. A chart, a bird's eye view in the form of a flow chart, how section 11.1 moves around. 13.1, denial withdrawal of exemption. You will be denied exemption under section 11 and 12 for all these reasons. If you apply for private religious purpose, for the benefit of particular religion community, of course, there are exceptions with some case laws also. Income applied for the benefit of specified persons, 13.1C. Funds invested other than modes specified in section 11.5. These are the things where you will not get the deduction under section 11 and 12. Coming to section 13.2, when will it be treated that you have applied the amount or you have used the amount for the direct or indirect benefit of the persons specified in section 13.3, right? 13.3. If you give the property of the trust on a concessional rate, if you give some facility or services without charging adequate amount. So these are certain cases where it will be treated that your case will fall under section 13.2. And thereby your trust will lose the exemption in 11.12 subject to certain conditions. Certain case laws whereby members have got a lot of queries regarding, can we pay remuneration to professional doctors who are running a hospital? Can we pay remuneration to promoters or founder promoters of the educational institute who are qualified and who are giving their services as far as teaching to the students are concerned, can we give them remuneration? So there are, I have described as well as I have given case laws whereby you can come to a conclusion that you may pay a remuneration which is reasonable provided the particular trustee or the specified person has got the required knowledge. So this is about 13.3. And what is the meaning of specified person is given in section 13. Section 13.4. 13.4. Exemption shall not be denied if the investment of the trust or institution in a concern in which the specified person has a substantial interest, provided such investment is not more than 5% of the capital of that concern. Suppose I am a trustee, I am investing a particular amount in the business entity, but that my investment is less than 5%. And if the trust is investing the amount in that particular business entity, section 13.4 will come to the rescue. So this is about 13.4. 13.6, read with section 12.2, we have already dealt with. If you are giving services to your specified person, if you are running an educational institute or a hospital, and if you are giving services to the specified person, the amount to that extent will be disallowed, will be treated as an income of the charitable organization. You will not lose the entire exemption. 13.7 talks about 13.7 read with 115 BBC talks about anonymous donation. How it is charged: 30% flat rate of tax on anonymous donation in excess of 5% of total donation received by the SSE or rupees 1 lakh, whichever is higher. After the exempt amount, that exempt amount will be included in the regular income, and after applying these limits, whatever amount you are getting as the anonymous donations will be taxed at 30%. And that particular amount, after paying the taxes of 30%, you need not apply 85% out of it. Because you have already paid the taxes, the entire amount can be accumulated and transferred to your capital account or the corpus or reserve, as the case may be. Of course, this particular section is not applicable to religious organizations. Religious organizations, if you are getting anonymous donations, you may book it as your income and you will not be taxed at the maximum marginal rate. Specific provision has been given whereby a religious organization will not be taxed for anonymous donations. I have read various, I have read the commentary of the finance minister also provided in the books, whereby they have said, the finance minister has said that why this particular section has been brought in to avoid, to check round tripping of funds. जैसे हम कहते हैं ना, काला पैसा सफेद करना, तो वो that just to stop that activity, this anonymous donation ka funda has been brought in. Genuine organizations whereby you are receiving anonymous donations will not be put to tax. And of course, ये जो limit दी हुई है, this limit also comes to a rescue in most of the cases. So that is about 115 BBC and the necessary explanations. Some case laws are given whereby it has been decided in favor of religious organizations and they were not put to tax under section 115 BBC. 13.8, again 215, I have already covered that if in a particular year the 20% limit is exceeding, only in that case you will lose the exemption. If in the subsequent year, if your limit is falling below 20%, in that case you will get the exemption. Why 13.8 is provided? Suppose if 12A is denied to such organizations, then 115 TETF will kick in and you will end up paying a lot of taxes. So that is why this specific provision of 13.8 has been provided to us. 13.9, again 13.9 section, filing of form number 10. The filing of form number 10 has to be done on or before the due date. Otherwise, the deduction, the amount accumulated under section 11.2 will not be allowed as a deduction. You can't wait up to 31st March. You have to file the form number 10 in time. You have to file the audit report in time. You have to file the income tax return in time. Of course, for 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19, delay in filing of return can also be condoned by making an application to the Principal Commissioner of Income Tax or Commissioner of Income Tax, as the case may be. But of course, one more thing, in form number 9A, you have been given a choice. The filing of form number 9A or the return filing in the case of form number 9A can be done up to the end of the assessment year. So these are two different things that you can make a note of. Some other relevant points and the circular which I have already covered. Now, coming to the amendments by the Finance Bill 2022, subsection 10 after 9 has been introduced, where the provision of subsection 8 are applicable. Provision of subsection 8 are applicable. 8 in the sense proviso to section 250. And 12(1)(b). 12(1)(b) is what? Audit. And 12(a)(1)(b) is what? Filing of returns in time. Its income becomes chargeable. Because of these particular sections, in those cases, you will be allowed expenditure. You will be allowed expenditure. Otherwise, erstwhile, what used to happen is suppose if there is a violation of the above mentioned sections, in that case, the entire gross income was put to tax at the maximum marginal rate. Thereby, a lot of litigated tax liabilities are standing. So that is why this particular subsection, I believe, has been introduced, so that at least the expenditure, the genuine expenditure, the expenditure which has been done towards the for achieving the objects of the trust is allowed, and very rightly so. So this is a very welcome subsection, I would say. Explanation for determination of expense: the provision of section 40A(1)(a) and 40A(3)(3)(a) shall apply mutatis mutandis. What does this mean? If there is some disallowance because of TDS not being deducted or the payments exceeding 10,000 made in cash, that has to be added back. And only after that, the taxable income has to be arrived. One more subsection has been introduced, proposed to be introduced: no deduction in respect of any expenditure or allowance or set off. Again, no set off. That has already been covered when we spoke about 1023C. Now, proposed new section 115 BBI. One more new section. It is proposed to tax the specified income at the rate of 30% in the hands of the trust institution without allowing any deduction of expenditure. Now, what are those specified incomes? Income accumulated or set apart in excess of 15% where such accumulation is not allowed. Accumulated amount is not invested in the specified mode of investment. Income accumulated and not applied for charitable purposes. Income applied for benefit of specified person and income applied for charitable purposes outside India on projects not authorized by the central government. Okay. Now, proposed new section 271 AAE by the Finance Bill 2022. Now, what does this section say? This section says that if you are spending an amount on the specified persons directly or indirectly, in that case, the amounts, a penalty of 100% of the amounts spent on the specified person can be levied. That is on first violation. If similar violation is repeated, in that case, penalty of 200% will be levied. This is over and above the taxation calculation. So the department is very keen on checking the expenditures made for specified persons. So one has to be very careful to check once again whether there should be no amount spent which you cannot justify for the direct or indirect benefit of specified persons. Section 8IG, I'm not dealing much as far as 8IG is concerned. It is about gross qualifying amount. 50% will be allowed. It is applicable for 1023C entities also and 11 and 12 entities also. One very important thing: donation above rupees 2,000 in cash will not qualify for ATJ deduction. A lot of my clients had their queries saying that, sir, हम 2,000 से ज़्यादा cash नहीं ले सकते क्या? The trust can take cash more than 2,000 rupees, but the person who is donating the amount will get deduction only up to rupees 2,000. So that is the difference. You can issue a receipt of cash more than 2,000 rupees. You have accounted that money, but the person who's donating the amount will get deduction only up to 2,000 rupees for donations made in cash. Similarly, as far as section 8G is concerned, 1023C 12A entities and ATG approvals. The people, the trusts or the organizations which are registered under ATG can approved under section ATG can apply for reapproval in this slot of 1st April 2021 to 31st March 2022. They will get the registration or approval. Registration is in the case of 12A and approval is in the case of ATG. So you will get for the next 5 years. Provisional ka funda has kicked in over here also. So whenever you are coming up with a new trust, you can apply for 12A immediately. You can apply for ATG after getting 12A, or you can apply simultaneously also, provided you can give the number of 12A. What we do is, first we get the 12A registration done, and then we go for ATG registration. As far as the re-registration or reapproval thing is concerned. And as far as the provisional thing is concerned, we first apply 12A, then we apply ATG also. Because by the time you get your 12A registration, the time limits might change. So it is better you go for both the things. But one thing you should take care of is first apply for 12A and then you go for ATG. Because 12A is a precondition to approval under section ATG. Any organization spending more than 5% on religious objects, on religious things, will not qualify for section ATG. 2000 we have already covered. Section ATG not applicable to donations in kind. Deduction under section ATG can be claimed only against positive income and taxable income. It cannot be claimed against the donations in kind. This is the chart again for ATG also, similar to 1023C and 12A. Then 234G and 271K. These were the two sections introduced by, if I'm not wrong, Finance Act 2020. Similar to TDS provisions, annual statement has to be filed under section 230. Annual statement has to be filed, and late fee of rupees 200 per day for delay in providing the donation details to the prescribed authority and certificate to the donor is levied. 200 late fee of rupees 200 per day. The amount of fee shall not exceed the amount in respect of which the failure has occurred. Suppose if the donation is of 5,000 rupees, the late fee cannot be more than 5,000 rupees. That is what it means. Section 271K, penalty of a sum not less than 10,000 up to rupees 1 lakh on violation again. So one late fee and one penalty has been proposed by two different sections, section 234G and sections 271K. So now everything, the statements will have to be submitted after 31st of March now. See, all the donors who have donated amounts, they should get the certificate. And once they get the certificate, then only they will be in a position to claim that amount as deduction under section 115 TDTETF, accredited income. What does this say? Suppose if your 12A is cancelled for reasons mentioned over here, in that case, your calculations as far as accredited income will be done. The fair market value of the assets which you are holding, less the fair market value of the liabilities. The net amount which is arrived after this calculation will be taxed at the maximum marginal rate. So, dear friends, one has to be very careful as far as your 12A registrations are concerned. Section 1023C earlier was not covered under this chapter, but by the Finance Act 2022, Section 1023C organizations, institutions, charitable trusts are also proposed to be covered under this chapter. So once your registration or approval is cancelled, then in that case, the accredited income will have to be calculated and tax will be paid at the maximum marginal rate. And what are the situations? Converted into any form not eligible for registration under section 12AA or 12AB, merged with any trust or institution not having similar objects, or dissolution, on dissolution failed to transfer all its assets to any other trust or institution. These are the three possibilities. Then how it is calculated is given. Who will be the person responsible to discharge the liability? That is defined in this act. And what are the time limits applicable, whereby the provisions of section this chapter will kick in. All these things have been defined in section 115 TTF. It is more of a text, so people can go through this text for a better understanding of the provisions. But one thing is for sure, I don't understand why, the tax in this particular chapter, according to me, there are a few fundamental issues. What are those issues? The mandate of Income Tax Act is confined to taxing income only and not assets held as legal obligation. Now, why this chapter, you are taxing the assets, you are not taxing the income. So, I don't know. Let us see what happens in the future, but this might lead to a lot of litigations, which we'll have to see in further. Proposed amendment by the Finance Bill 2022. Earlier, the sections were applicable to trusts registered under Section 12A. The applicability of the section is added to trust institutions falling under 1023C, 4, 5, 6, and 6A. We have already discussed now. 143.3. This is also, I think we have discussed this also. When a AO refers a case to the PCIT is given a specified time limit to execute the reference, to come up with a written order of cancellation or otherwise. That order has to be conveyed to the assessing officer, and the assessing officer is bound to make the assessment only after the order is being received from PCIT or CIT. And the time which is taken by the PCIT or CIT to pass the order, by that particular time, the time limit of the AO will also increase to complete the assessment. For example, if the due date for completing the assessment is 31st March 2022, the PCIT or CIT has taken a time of 6 months after reference in passing the order. In that case, the time limit for passing the order by the assessing officer will increase by 6 months. That is what it means. Coming to 164(2) and 3 and read with section 167B. Now 167B, I mean, there is a lot of ambiguity. I've been discussing this earlier also, that if you are not registered under section 12, most of the intimations which you receive, what they do is either disallow the expenses, they tax the gross amount at the maximum marginal rate, which I believe is a very faulty approach. Because 167B, they treat the organizations as AOP. And AOP with the percentage or share of the beneficiaries defined. That is how they are treating. In fact, ours is a case whereby if you are not registered under section 12AB, it is a AOP with the share of the beneficiaries undefined. Shares of the beneficiaries are the public at large. In that case, 164(2) and 3 and section 167B specifically says that such organizations are to be treated as individuals, whereby you got to allow 250,000 as the minimum amount which is not taxable, and then the slabs of the individuals has to be applied. All the relevant case laws have been given. Even keeping this aside, based on the commercial principles, you should get a deduction of all the expenses incurred, and only the net amount should be taxed, and that too for the slab, in the slab, or at the rate of the slabs, or at the rates applicable to individuals, not at the maximum marginal rate right from the rupee one. So I have been dealing with such cases for the last so many years, and I have been successful in all those cases whereby I was in a position to reduce the liability substantially. Because many a times you see that the surplus of the trust is 10 lakhs and the tax liability is say 25 lakhs. So this is highly unjustified. But the only thing is we have to understand 164(2) and 3 read with section 167B. Now, of course, this ambiguity has put to rest to a very great extent because of the introduction of, if I'm not wrong, subsection 10 in section 13, whereby it says that expenditure has to be allowed subject to certain conditions. But then too, 164(2) and 3 read with section 167B is always available for your rescue. So I've been very successful in dealing all these cases. If anybody has got any queries regarding 164(2) and 3 and 167B, they can always approach me. I will share my contact numbers. I will share my email IDs, and I'm ready to help if there is any other query. So with this, I think I have covered my syllabus, and I think within time, because I was running against time. So just a minute, just let me check if I have not skipped anything. I think I have covered everything. So with this, I have completed my syllabus, and I would like to pass on the mantle to CA Rakesh Soni, my very good friend, to do the to carry on with the completion or the question answers as the case may be.
Thank you very much, Raviji. The way you explained the topic is really very nice and fantastic. Now we can start the question and answer session.
Please.
Raviji, please off your sliding.
Ah. This slide close kar do.
2-3 questions is already in the chat box.
Just a minute. Yes, sir.
Raviji, 2-3 questions already in the chat box. One question is from Mr. Rakesh Jurnwala ji. He is asking, capital gain reinvested and exercising of option for 1 year is still not made applicable to 1023C institution.
Can you read the question once again?
Section 11.4, 11.1A, capital gain reinvested and exercising of option for 1 year is still not made applicable to section 1023 institution.
Yes. It is not made applicable because the applicability in this particular 2022 amendments is done for only the accumulation of income for 5 years. They have not specified about the carryover for 1 year. As we when we talk about the explanations to section 11.1, that has not been introduced in section 1023C entities. I think in the next amendment they might come up with. That has not been introduced.
Okay. The other question is from Hemlata ji Kulbe.
Yeah.
He is asking, could you please explain what if a business entity transferring its income to a trust made by this entity itself? Could you please explain what if a business entity transferring its income to a trust made by this entity itself? This is regarding transfer of income.
Income transferred by a business entity to a trust.
Yeah.
Which is made by this entity itself.
Correct.
It's fine. I mean, you can do it. I mean, it has to be given as a donation to the charitable organization.
Okay.
Suppose
one
yeah,
lengthy question is appearing in the chat box. Can you please open your chat box?
Chat box. In the question.
It's a large question from Rakesh Jurnwala ji.
Just a minute, sir. Sir. Question from chat box from Rakesh Jurnwala.
Otherwise, I can read this one.
Please, sir.
Section 1023C 6A approved the medical institution 115 TD has been made applicable to such institution from financial year 22-23. One of the conditions of the section is the institution should be solely for philanthropic purpose. Recent Supreme Court judgment Ashwin Sehkari Rugnalaya has laid down that for section 1023C 6A exemption, the institutions has to be different from a commercial hospital. Charitable purpose includes medical relief. Now, what will be the termed as medical relief? Solely for the philanthropic purpose and what will be the quantum. It is well settled that profit in carrying out the object will not by the itself jeopardizes the exemption. Further, whether approval can be cancelled in absence of the philanthropic purpose and lead to 115 TD tax on the accredited income.
Right. 115 TD TETF, as far as the section 1023C is concerned, will come into effect after this Finance Act 2022. If the case pertains to, first of all, under section 1023C, and as far as accredited income is concerned, definitely Mr. Jhunjhunwala's case will be an old one, I believe. In that case, 115 TD TETF will not be applicable. But one thing I will request Mr. Jhunjhunwala, he can mail his question to me, and with his contact number, I will go through the entire case. I will go through his entire query, and then I will call him and discuss with him what is the case, and we will come to a conclusion.
Very good. If anybody want to raise any question, please raise your hands. Any participant want to raise the question, please raise the hands.
But Rakesh ji, please share Mr. Jhunjhunwala's number. I will definitely discuss with him what is.
Okay. Anyone want to raise the question, please raise hands.
Bhavalal. सबको ट्रस्ट का सब्जेक्ट अच्छा समझ में आ गया लगता है,
ऐसा लग रहा है. I think let me unmute Hemlata ji.
I think we should wait for 1 or 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Somebody has to wait. (11.4, 11.1A).
हेमलता जी अनम्यूट कीजिए. हेमलता जी अपने आप को अनम्यूट कीजिए.
Hello.
हेमलता जी.
Yes.
Hello, sir.
You can ask.
Sir, you have taken my question. Thanks.
Okay.
अच्छा, okay.
You properly explained.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gupta ji, this is Rakesh. Can I speak? Can I ask a question?
Please.
Am I
Yes,
audible?
राकेश जी.
हाँ जी, तो एक मेडिकल इंस्टीट्यूशन है जो 1023(6) में एग्जाम्प्ट है, वो एक नर्सिंग कॉलेज भी है उसके.
जी.
Most of the nurses are being absorbed in the institution itself, medical.
Got it.
Now it has not taken, suppose 1023(6) का नर्सिंग कॉलेज की अलग अप्रूवल नहीं ली हुई है. ये कि this is medical relief, जैसे pharmacy is for medical relief.
Right.
This nursing college is also medical relief, and the nurses being trained either are being used in the hospital or in another hospital where it is for medical relief.
Right, sir.
Now going forward, ji, whether the 1023(6) has to be applied or the 6A can be on the basis, the same basis जो pharmacy का logic है, different courts ने held किया है, it can carry on with the 6A approval which it has.
सर एक्चुअली स्पीकिंग, जो मैंने जितने भी जुडिशियल प्रेसिडेंसीज देखे हैं और जो कमेंट्रीज पढ़ी है रिस्पेक्टिव मतलब अथॉरिटीज की, उसमें एक चीज कंक्लूजन आया है मुझे भी कि भाई जैसे आप नर्सिंग की बात कर रहे हैं, तो नर्सिंग का एजुकेशन एंड एब्जॉर्बिंग ऑफ दोज नर्सेज इन द पर्टिकुलर मेडिकल इंस्टीट्यूशन इज वेरी वेल अ प्रमोशन ऑफ मेडिकल हेल्थ, और बेसिकली जो भी मेडिकल से रिलेटेड जो भी है, इट इज अ प्रमोशन ऑफ दैट. तो आपको अकॉर्डिंग टू मी यू डिड नॉट टेक अ स्पेसिफिक अप्रूवल फॉर 1023(6) फॉर योर नर्सिंग ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, बिकॉज
6A का तो जी पूरा एसएससी के लिए है, सेम पैन के अंडर वो इंस्टीट्यूशन है. My question is, do I have to go for 1023(6) education के लिए for the separately for the nursing college? That is my question. और जो
देखिए,
6A का जो existing approval है for the trust itself, which is having the hospital also and nursing college also, that will do.
Got it now. कैसा है ना सर कि अकॉर्डिंग टू मी 1023(6) से अप्रूवल विल होल्ड गुड एज फार एज योर नर्सिंग कॉलेज इज कंसर्न्ड, बिकॉज अल्टीमेटली इट इज अ मेडिकल इंस्टीट्यूशन.
हाँ जी.
Because it is ultimately a medical institution, you need not take separate permissions under section 1023(6) and 1023(6)(a both.
ठीक है.
क्योंकि एक ही पैन के अंदर आप सारी एक्टिविटी कैरी ओवर कर सकते हैं. You can always specify that it is for the promotion of medical.
Yes,
it is for the promotion of medicine.
क्योंकि जी हमको वही दिक्कत आ रही थी कि 1023C speaks not of the trust, it speaks of the institution. अभी कई जजमेंट आपके इसमें भी आपने वो शायद कोट किया था शायद आपके स्प्रेड में कि मद्रास हाई कोर्ट का और कई जजमेंट्स है कि डिफरेंस बिटवीन 12A and 1023C is 12A there has to be a trust, and 1023C is a trust के अंदर कोई इंस्टीट्यूशन हो, चाहे उसके 3 हो चाहे हो, स्पेसिफिक इंस्टीट्यूशन कैन गो फॉर अ स्पेसिफिक अप्रूवल अंडर. तो हमारे जो 2 इंस्टीट्यूशन अगर डिपार्टमेंट बोले कि आपके ये 2 इंस्टीट्यूशन है, एक कॉलेज है और एक है, ठीक है, ट्रस्ट एक ही है, बट 2 इंस्टीट्यूशन है, दैट यू शुड हैव टेकन अंडर 1023(6) and this medical वाला हॉस्पिटल है, that should have taken 1023(6)(a. then how good I stand in the judicial forum of my case जी. ये खाली
what I understand is कि अगर if you are going for 1023(6) separately as far as your nursing institution is concerned, in that case you got to have a separate PAN, you got to have a separate registration, you got to have a separate application.
right वो तो है, वो अगर लेना होगा तो वो करना ही पड़ेगा जी.
Exactly. So what I mean to say is कि when the entire thing is correlated and connected to each other,
हाँ जी,
we will have to take a holistic view. Overlap हो सकता है सर. आज
समझ गया जी. तो मतलब अपना चांसेस इज गुड इनफ.
yes, good enough because section
प्रोबेबिलिटी जैसे बोलते हैं ना, एक प्रोबेबिलिटी क्या है जी, तो
बहुत अच्छी
हमको भी ये लगा था प्रोबेबिलिटी यही है, तो अभी तक हमने वो अप्लाई नहीं कर रखा था. तो जस्ट टू
प्रोबेबिलिटी उसमें सर. और सेक्शन 215 का जहां तक सवाल है ना सर, सेक्शन 215 की जब हम बात करें चैरिटेबल पर्पस का जो डेफिनेशन है वो
जी, एक मिनट सर, एक मिनट, हमको सर मत बोलिए, माय नेम इज राकेश, ऐसे शर्मिंदा मत कीजिए जी. हाँ जी, बोलिए जी.
as far as the charitable purpose का definition is concerned, उसमें भी कैसा है ना कि the purpose में overlap each other. मैंने उसमें कहा है it may overlap each other. Suppose करो आज मैं किसी गरीब बच्चे का स्कूल का फीस देता हूँ.
गुप्ता जी एग्रीड, वो है 12A का अगर ट्रस्ट होता है ना कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. 1023C क्या है जी, उसमें 6A और दोनों को क्या बोलते हैं, सोनली फॉर मेडिकल. तो मैं क्या कह रहा जी, अगर मेरा 1023(6)A का है तो मैं किसी गरीब को कंबल या फ्लड में हेल्प नहीं कर सकता. हाँ, उसके दवा दारू के दवा के लिए चाहे जो कर सकता हूँ.
Exactly.
बट जनरल हेल्प आई कैन नॉट गिव. सो whether department can say since 6A is exclusive for medical purpose, solely for medical purpose, how come you are doing education thing? अब ये जो अभी तक कोई दिक्कत नहीं थी, जब 115 TD आ गई ना जी 1023C के लिए फ्यूचर में, now it has become a worry कि डिपार्टमेंट, knowing departments attitude for finding even of a charitable trust, अभी इतना जो वो लोग कर रहे हैं, तो उसी में लग रहा है कि ये 115 जब आ गया तो whether it will be advisable to go separately or continue with this.
I think we should continue with
this.
I think we should continue with the same thing because क्योंकि आपका what I understand is it is an integrated project.
Right.
ऐसा नहीं है कि भाई वो सेपरेट है, उसी के तहत सारा काम हो रहा है.
हाँ, अकाउंट्स भी कंसोलिडेटेड वैसे ही होते हैं.
Yes. So it will be definitely treated as medical institution and related to medicine only. ठीक है. We have a very strong case.
वो एक दूसरा क्वेश्चन भी पूछ लो जी कि वो आपसे
बोलिए ना.
शॉर्ट में कोई 6A का ही है जी. 6A में क्या है जी, वहाँ एक कंडीशन है solely for philanthropic purpose. और अभी जो बॉम्बे हाई कोर्ट का जजमेंट को सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कंफर्म कर दिया है कि मेडिकल इंस्टीट्यूशन जस्ट रेंडरिंग मेडिकल रिलीफ will not qualify for exemption under 1023C. It has to be different from a commercial hospital. It cannot run itself on the same basis of commercial hospital. That categorically Supreme Court has let this down.
Okay.
Now, hospital जो run करता है जी with basically philanthropic purpose, अभी तक डिपार्टमेंट ये लोग उठाते नहीं थे. अब ये होगा कि after this judgment Supreme Court का philanthropic purpose is not defined.
Right.
solely for philanthropy. Now,
Right.
question is, what is the quantum to determine कि आज मेरे suppose hospital की 100 रुपया ये है income और 10 रुपया bottom line है जी, 100 रुपया top line है bottom line. अब उसमें 10 रुपया में से philanthropic purpose में मतलब ये होता है कि आप कुछ free bed कीजिए, कुछ ऐसे कीजिए, that is generally stated. But what is the quantum? It becomes again a subjective. जैसे transfer pricing is because it will become very subjective.
Yes, sir.
What is the philanthropic purpose? तो और प्लस ये अब ये आ गया कि जब 115 TD आ गया, स्पेसिफिक वायलेशन कैंसलेशन के कारण 115 TD आ गया 1023C के लिए. Now if my hospital is not run on philanthropic purpose as required by the department, in the eye of department, they may go for cancellation because that is one of the specified condition for 1023C. Once I am not meeting the condition, मेरा specified cancellation हो सकता है. अभी तक अगर कैंसिलेशन होता है तो जी हमारे खाली 30% टैक्स ऑफ इनकम लगता है. तो आप क्या जी नेक्स्ट ईयर से 150 TD लग जाएगा जैसे ही कैंसिल होगा स्पेसिफिक वायलेशन में. तो अब द क्वेश्चन बिकम्स फॉर ऑल द हॉस्पिटल्स अंडर 1023C व्हाट विल बी द आई थिंक अपने जो एसोसिएशंस है ये दे शुड रिक्वेस्ट द बोर्ड टू कम आउट विद अ सर्कुलर or some clarification. What do you mean by philanthropic purpose?
True, very true.
Because it's a very subjective. आज मैं अगर suppose 5 करोड़ की इनकम में 50 लाख खर्चा कर दूं philanthropy, डिपार्टमेंट बोलेगा 5 लाख 50 लाख is nothing. You should have done 50%. You should have done 40%. It is going to be a never-ending litigation. My whole question was कि there is no doubt if the department holds कि किसी तरह वो बोलता है कि आपका philanthropy नहीं है तो वो कैंसिल कर सकता है. और कैंसिल करने से नॉट ओनली 30% इनकम एवरी ईयर हमारे पुराने एक्टिवेटेड इनकम में तो लैंड बिल्डिंग सब चीज मिला के उसकी मार्केट वैल्यू पे ये मेरा छोटा सा सवाल था जी. इट्स अ वेरी
ये केस लॉ नोट करवा देंगे मेरे को.
हाँ जी ये
राकेश जी आप इनको मेल भेज देना, मैं आपको मेल एड्रेस शेयर कर दूंगा.
हाँ मैं
है ना. अच्छा
दैट्स ऑल.
रवि जी,
थैंक यू जी.
रवि जी, one participant has raised the hands.
Yeah.
And is अब देखिए आपको दिख रहा है हाथ रवि जी?
मेरे को तो नहीं दिख रहा है. हाँ दिख रहा है. अंकित.
हाँ तो ये
खतर.
Who is this?
अंकित खतर.
अंकित.
Yes sir, tell me.
अंकित जी अनम्यूट कीजिए. अंकित जी
कहाँ गए?
नहीं हो रहा है उनका. आई डोंट थिंक.
और न्यू मैसेजेस
रवि जी एक क्वेश्चन मेरा है.
बोलो सर.
एक सिंपल क्वेश्चन है कि इन मोस्ट ऑफ द केसेस व्हाइल वी आर फाइलिंग द इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न immediately we are getting 143(1)(a) intimation from the CPC and they are taxing 30% straightway on the income.
राइट सर.
तो इसके लिए क्या उपाय है?
वो तो रेक्टिफिकेशन अप्लाई करना पड़ेगा सर. जैसे 164(2)(3) और 167(b) की बात की मैंने. प्रोवाइडेड अपना 12वे रजिस्टर्ड है नहीं है. आई बिलीव 12वे रजिस्टर्ड नहीं होगा.
राइट. ये सब स्मॉल ट्रस्ट है.
हाँ छोटे ट्रस्ट है. तो उसमें कैसा है कि आपको 164(2)(3) के तहत ये एक्चुअली होता क्या है कि अपन 1023C5 में ये सारे एप्लीकेशन सारे रिटर्न्स फाइल होने चाहिए. 1023C5 हम क्या करते हैं कि भाई वो अपन उसको 12वे रजिस्टर्ड नहीं जैसे भी बोलते हैं ना, वो तुरंत पूरा कैलकुलेशन उसको 143(1) में क्या करता है, मैक्सिमम मार्जिनल रेट पे लगा देता है और ग्रॉस इनकम पे लगा देता है, डिसअलाउइंग 11 and 12. तो रेक्टिफिकेशन हो रहे हैं. रेक्टिफिकेशन जब हम फाइल करते हैं तो रेक्टिफिकेशन हो जाता है. अगर कहीं मुश्किल हो तो मुझे बताइएगा, मैं करवा दूंगा.
करेक्ट. रवि जी, आई वुड लाइक टू शेयर ये प्लेजर थिंग दैट वन मेंबर पार्टिसिपेटिंग फ्रॉम द मेलबोर्न, CA Bimal Yellow जी. Bimal जी, Please unmute yourself. Bimal ji,
Yes, sir.
say something
sir.
about the seminar.
Yes, sir.
So it's a very good seminar. Basically, I just wanted to know about the charitable things and family partition, sort of things, and inheritance about the international level for NRI purpose. If you can highlight for some tax
Sir,
provision.
Actually, the query, as far as your query is concerned, it is related to private trusts.
Okay.
So private trust, I mean, registration is not required. And of course, it is taxed as AOP, Association of Persons. And one more very important thing is the beneficiaries are defined and the shares of the beneficiaries are defined.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
So after the accrual of the income to the respective beneficiaries, only then we can come about, talk about taxation. And as far as international taxation is concerned, that is not my cup of tea. So I think we have to discuss with some other person as far as international taxation is concerned.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bimal ji, for participating from Melbourne.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. It's 12:30 midnight here.
Yeah. Thanks. Now,
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
I think everything is clear to all the participants. Now I invite the Secretary of Kishangarh branch, CA Mohit ji Jain, for the formal vote of thanks. Mohit ji, please. Mohit ji.
राकेश जी शायद मोहित जी कनेक्ट नहीं हो पा रहे हैं।
ओके, तो सचिन जी बोल रहे हैं क्या?
हाँ सर, सचिन बोल रहा था।
सचिन जी आप I think you are the perfect as a chief guest also, or you can give the perform a vote of thanks also.
सर रवि सर की तो जितनी तारीफ की जाए उतनी कम है। आज जितना सर ने मतलब आज सर को सुनने के लिए मेलबॉर्न से भी अगर लोग जुड़े रात को 12:30 बजे तक सकते हैं इनका नेम फेम कितना है। और क्योंकि मुंबई से भी मेरे को लग रहा है काफी पार्टिसिपेंट है इसमें, तो ये रवि सर की और राकेश सर की फॉलोइंग है जो साथ में जुड़ी हुई है। और आज रवि सर ने जितना चीजें क्लियर कर दी ना, तो उतना तो मैंने कई वेबिनार्स अटेंड करी हैं। सर की वेबिनार को मैं दूसरे नंबर से अटेंड कर रहा था क्योंकि इस नंबर पे बार बार कॉल आ रहे थे तो कनेक्ट हो रहा था, डिस्कनेक्ट हो रहा था। मगर लिटरली मुझे ज्ञान के मतलब सागर है सर, तो गागर में सागर भर देते हैं। मेरे तो जितने भी क्वेरीज होती हैं सर अपना मेरे को उसका रिप्लाई देते ही हैं जब भी मैं इनको कॉल करता हूँ। और मैं अधिकतर कॉल राकेश जी के थ्रू रूट करके करता हूँ, अब मैं डायरेक्ट कर लिया करूंगा। तो मैं यही कह रहा हूँ कि सर का जो ये है, जो ये सबके साथ में मिलनसारिता है और जो डाउन टू अर्थ नेचर है ना, उसकी मतलब तारीफ जितनी करो उतना कम है। और सर जैसे मेरे क्या कहते हैं बहुत सारे रिलेटिव जो मुंबई में रहते हैं, सर महेंद्र के मतलब अपन कहें तो किंग है। तो मुंबई में जितने भी चैरिटेबल ट्रस्ट से रिलेटेड इश्यूज आते हैं, कोई भी अगर आप इनको रेफर करेंगे तो सर आपको बिल्कुल इसका रिवर्ट करेंगे। थैंक्स अ लॉट, आपने अपना समय निकाला और हमें अभिभूत किया। धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू सर। थैंक यू
रवि जी, मैं आपको मेल एड्रेस शेयर करूंगा ब्रांच का, आप जरा पीपीटी शेयर कर देना।
आई विल डू दैट।
यस यस,
आई विल डू दैट।
थैंक यू एवरीवन, थैंक यू, थैंक्स अ लॉट।
थैंक यू सो मच, थैंक यू फॉर गिविंग मी दिस अपॉर्चुनिटी। और सब लोग जितने भी पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं उनका तहे दिल से शुक्रिया। आज सचिन जैन जी का खास करके इतना समय उन्होंने निकाला अपने बिजी शेड्यूल से, बहुत बड़ी बात है, बहुत ही बड़ी बात है। आई थैंक यू फ्रॉम माय बॉटम ऑफ माय हार्ट। थैंक यू सो मच।
थैंक यू एवरीवन, थैंक यू।